there were many, many acts of gallantry and many, many tales of valor. What I am going to focus on is to try and make it a bit more sort of a connect between you and the heroes of the 71 war by connecting you to the stories that made up my TV series on Tales of Valor. I think some of you may have seen it. It's now there on Discovery Plus. With the help of my friends in Times Now and with the vision of Times Now's management, we were able to put them together. And these Tales of Valor, if I can be a bit self-congratulatory to mention that in the last year, it won the Gold Award in the TV Awards function. And I dedicated the award to every sung and unsung hero of our wars, because it's their story. I was just a facilitator and the storyteller. So can we start, please?
They had booby traps, they had concertina wires, minefields.
Bullets riddled from his face downwards towards his body.
He said he will continue to fight and lead his men.
They wanted nothing more than to avenge the death of their fallen comrades.
It was a bunch of gladiators who thought no task is impossible.
A tale of valor which will inspire generations to come. Okay, so what we are going to do is, what I have done, and I've asked my dear producers in Times Now to do, is that these were little sort of promo clips of 30, 40 seconds of each story of valor, which was shown before the stories were shown on Times Now and Mirror Now, and before they went on to Discovery. This just gives you a bit of an idea of what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to take about 2 minutes per story, because then it gives me about 40 minutes or so is the time given to speak. This is about the Battle of Hilli. Now, for military men, everyone knows about it. It was exceptional because for 2-3 reasons. One was that this battle took place before the war actually started. Now, a lot of people might find that surprising, because technically the war started on the 9th of 3rd, 4th December, as we know, when Pakistani jets bombed Indian airfields, Pathankot, Agra, others on the Indo-Pak Western Front. But this battle took place about a week earlier, the night of 25th, 26th November, when 8 guards had been moved in on the Bangladesh front. And while they were taking up their positions to move steadily towards the Pakistani front lines, their earlier efforts to find what was the Pakistani frontal areas met with massive resistance from the Pakistani forces. They had Pakistan, for example, the township or the village of Hilli had been fortified with virtually every hutment there as a pillbox. And military men would understand the pillbox is a fairly lethal thing to be going up against. But they went in, company after company, led by some very brave officers. One of them, who I believe as a company commander was one of the first casualties of Alpha Company, should have got at least a Veer Chakra, if not a Mahavir Chakra. He was recommended for a PVC. But as is the confusion in army headquarters, citations get misplaced and lost, and the officer got nothing. But his 2IC, a second lieutenant, was hardly with a year or two's service, got a Mahavir Chakra. Lieutenant Shamsher Singh was later also a casualty. There were many casualties in this action. The battalion eventually overcame Hilli with, as I must mention, with General Pannu sitting out here, with the help and assistance of a Maratha battalion which was next to them. And this battle then became a very major kind of signpost and a motivator for our troops in subsequent battles. 8 guards, from the records that we have, won 3 Mahavir Chakras. So it became known as the Triple MVC Battalion. It also won the Battle Honor and Theatre Honor of East Pakistan, Battle Honor Hilli, and had the rare distinction of being asked to march as a full battalion in the Republic Day Parade in January 72. So that is the significance of the gallantry of these men. Mahavir Chakra apart, they got several other gallantry awards, which are all displayed in the battalion. Battalion is very proud of it. Next film, please. So Hilli became the first battle, really major battle, that our troops fought in 71, but before the war started. Then we have the situation, the day the Pakistani air attack took place, rather late in the evening, I believe, 5:30 p.m. onwards. So the Navy decided the next day to hit Karachi. And therefore, Navy Day is celebrated on 4th of December because that is the day that the Navy launched Op Trident. Next film, please. Hello. The Indian Navy had put together a plan to bomb Karachi with all its naval might.
Since they are small boats, they don't have the range to operate from Bombay up to Karachi and back.
So they towed the boats too near that place. They were so surprised, they didn't realize that it was a missile that hit them.
Indian Navy's Karachi strike created havoc on the Pakistani side in 1971. Yes. So this was a turning point both in the history of the Indian Navy, and I'm sure naval officers will agree, it became a benchmark of what the Navy could do if it was given the authority to do that and the orders to do that. As naval officers will tell you that they were all set to take part in the 65 operations, but they weren't allowed to do so. For a variety of reasons, India's planners, both in 62 and 65, refrained from using in 62 the Air Force, and in 62 the Air Force, and in 65 the Navy, for fear or for concern that the conflict should not escalate beyond certain limits that Delhi had laid out. But in 71, I think there were no restrictions of this nature. Admiral Nanda, who had put together much of these plans, later boasted that Karachi burned for 7 days after the naval attacks. How did the naval attacks take place? I mean, these were meticulously put together in the Western Theatre, from Mumbai to places in Gujarat where the Navy had put together missile boats, frigates, and a whole lot of other resources. One of the interesting dimensions of this entire operation was that the Navy avoided, as far as possible, with the exception of one kill, which happened because of a Karachi-based private ship coming into the waters when they were told not to come in, which I believe led to a loss of civilian lives. Largely, the Navy operations were devastating for the Pakistan Navy. They first went in with missile boats. Interestingly, the OSA-class boats that the Indian Navy used, these were offered to the Pakistanis in 1968. They did not take up the offer for their own reasons, and it was a lesson they learned the hard way of what these boats could do. There were many ships involved in this action. There were many missions that were undertaken, but the Op Trident per se, the very effective part of it lasted about 90 minutes. In 90 minutes, they put Karachi up in flames. And as Admiral Nanda said, it burned for 7 days. It was decided that between 4th and 9th of December, there were various operations that were launched to teach Pakistan such a decisive lesson that the Pakistan Navy, after that, did not venture out into the high seas. The Air Force did come. They did bomb one of the coastal areas, one of the naval bases in the coastal areas in Gujarat, but our ships and boats had moved out of there. So militarily, we didn't suffer any casualties. Some fuel dumps were destroyed. There are many stories that make up this story, but the gallantry awards were a few, including Lieutenant Commander who was involved with the operation, forgetting his name, Brahma, I'm forgetting his name, he's somewhere here. There's so much of information that I've put together. But yeah, Babru Bhan Yadav, he was awarded a Veer Chakra, no, Mahavir Chakra, my fault. And a Veer Chakra was given to Lieutenant Commanders Bahadur Nariman Kavina, Indrajit Sharma, Om Prakash Mehta, and the commanding officers of INS Nipat, Nirghat, and INS Veer. Master Chief M.N. Sehgal of INS Nirghat was also awarded the Veer Chakra. Clearly, the high point of Navy's operations. This did have an impact on how Pakistan would behave in the fall of Dhaka, because their logistic support for the operations in Dhaka from the maritime point of view virtually diminished after that. Next, please. Major Kuldeep Singh Chandpuri stalled repeated attempts by a Pakistani formation which included tanks, armored vehicles, and infantrymen. The Battle of Longewala stands out for the defense of a desert outpost by men of 23 Punjab.
They had come with a brigade. We were only 120.
Pakistan thought that they would in one night capture Jaisalmer.
Major Chandpuri enabled the Air Force to knock the complete life out of Pakistani tanks.
Major Chandpuri was awarded the coveted Mahavir Chakra. I know there are views and counter-views about what happened in Longewala, but from as far as I know and what I've been able to check, I think a lot of credit goes to the grit and determination of Major Kuldeep Singh Chandpuri. There were many heroes in Longewala, but 23 Punjab's an Alpha Company, which was placed in Longewala, which was moved up actually from the month of October onwards, fearing and anticipating Pakistani ingress in that direction, was really, to me, one of the fiercest battles, a defensive battle, fought by anyone, anywhere, with the exception of Major Shaitan Singh's battle in Rezangla in 1962. This was one hell of a battle. And I think I've had the privilege of meeting Major Chandpuri, a very mild, humble man. But what he did that night, I think very few could have done any better. He had about 100+ men. His company outpost ahead of Jaisalmer was made up of mud huts. Nobody believed him initially when Lieutenant Dharamveer, who's shown in the film, reported a few vehicles moving up. I remember as a young officer doing a VIO course, somebody said that he reported that there were tanks moving up. The senior officer said, "You're looking at buffaloes." So he says, "Sir, it may be buffaloes, but those buffaloes have guns on them." So eventually, of course, this was a Pakistani brigade plus 4 battalions. It had an armored regiment and mechanized contingent with it. So I would say a combat group of mechanized forces. And artillery, which had range of 25 kilometers, Longewala was 18 kilometers. So they were shelling Longewala like hell. And any reinforcements that were being sent by the Indian Army, including AMX tanks from 20 Lancers, was not being able to reach. The Pakistanis had surrounded Longewala from all sides. I think that night, 4th, 5th December, was Chandpuri and his company's longest night. And on that night, they held on. Eventually, the brigade commander, I believe it was Brigadier Kharbanda, who said to Chandpuri that if it's not Pakistani opposition, you better watch out. He said, sir, I'm telling you, this is what it is. Hastily, they laid mines. J.P. Datta Saab will talk about his film, but Chandpuri was nothing like Sunny Deol, as you've seen in the film Border. He was very, very down-to-earth gentleman. He got wounded. I've seen the wound on his feet. I got to know him briefly when I was a young officer. He was commanding an adjoining battalion in my brigade, 3 Punjab. This action happened with 23 Punjab. But eventually, next morning, when the Air Force got a chance, and you saw a bit of Air Marshal Mini Bawa, who was the station commander in Jaisalmer, and the Air Force responded, they played merry hell into the Pakistani mechanized forces, made a graveyard in Longewala, which is still there to see. There's a museum in Longewala. And the Air Force officers were also suitably awarded. I think there were at least 6, if not 8 Veer Chakras that were given to, in that battle. 8 fighters who flew combat missions during Longewala all received Veer Chakras. And so did Major R.D. Law, later Brigadier R.D. Law of 7th Cavalry, who also received a Veer Chakra. Major Chandpuri received a Mahavir Chakra. There were 1 or 2 other awards that was given to 23 Punjab. My personal belief is they deserved more. It was a battle I think we can keep studying in history again and again, when 100-odd men held off an attack by nearly 4,000 men. It's unusual. Next, please. Some of the most audacious raids inside Pakistan without any air or artillery support.
Colonel Bhavani's idea was we can infiltrate very deep and raid.
I said, how do I get in touch with you? He said, you won't be able to.
The speed and ferocity of the attacks forced the Pakistanis to panic and flee.
And with Bhavani leading us, nothing could stop us.
So that's the kind of confidence, as Brigadier Chacko has just brought out, that officers of 10 paras had in Lieutenant Colonel His Highness Bhavani Singh of Jaipur. Now, Bhavani Singh ji had an illustrious, almost a copybook military career. He was in President's bodyguard, he was adjutant IMA, he commanded 10 paras, and he was chosen to take up this mission based on the experience of the Indian Army in the 1965 war, when the Pakistan Army had used tribal Hoors who were across the India-Pakistan border in Rajasthan to carry out raids within India. So they said, why can't we do similar kind of raids? And therefore, 10 para was designated to carry out the raids. They called themselves Desert Scorpions. They were based in Nasirabad near Ajmer. And after a while, they were shifted to Jodhpur, which is now their permanent base. And they continued to do all sorts of hide-and-seek games. Their vehicles would roam around the city of Jodhpur when the troops actually had moved out of the cantonment areas. So the local spies could not report to Pakistan that the unit has moved out from there. Eventually, there were multiple raids launched into Pakistan. They were to target Pakistan Army Ranger Camp, which is like the BSF, 80 kilometers inside Pakistan. And in the bargain, there's a place called Chachro. In the bargain, they also raided 1 or 2 other places in between. There was a classic SAS Second World War type raid where they had 17 Jongas lined up with machine guns mounted on them and just drove into the enemy opposition. There's little that the opposition could do. In some places, the opposition did find out that who they were. They came very close to it. One of the officers who's giving his bite about Colonel Bhavani's plan was, He himself admits in the documentary of single-handedly murdering Pakistanis who came close to him with a commando dagger. So Bhavani Singh inspired great loyalty, great commitment, and Chachro raid was a success. Most importantly, not a single man from 10 paras was a casualty. And that's pretty incredible, but I think our paras are capable of achieving that, as we saw even the post-Uri raids, where there wasn't a casualty with the exception of one chap who accidentally stepped on a landmine across the LOC. They came back, they had hit out at 2-3 other townships other than Chachro, captured a lot, left behind a lot of booty for the units that followed. One of them was 20 Rajputs. 20 Rajput was a motorized unit, which is different from a normal infantry unit if the ladies don't know. They move in vehicles with sand tires. But there were problems that 10 paras had on the way. Some of the vehicles got bogged down in the sand. Some of their silencer pipes got broken, and it worked to their advantage. They let broken silencer pipes carry on, so they sounded like tanks from a distance. And that had a greater psychological impact on the Pakistanis who could not understand how tanks had entered so close to their areas like Chachro when there was no news of tank assaults on the borders. Anyway, all in all, Colonel Bhavani was rightfully awarded the Mahavir Chakra for leading his battalion. And there were many other gallantry awards that were also given. Battle Honor Chachro was given to 10 para. And 10 para, like 8 guards, was asked to march on the Republic Day parade mounted on their jongas. Next, please.
Everybody said that is not possible. Chandan Singh said, I can do it.
His life and his exploits are what legends are made of. Air Marshal Chandan Singh was a rarity. Air Force officers will agree. He was commissioned actually into the British Army and later became an officer through the Jodhpur State Forces. And then came in contact with Maharaja Gat Singh Jodhpur's father, who was an honorary air marshal and who suggested he switch to the Air Force. So he switched to the Air Force and was given one rank below. So he should have got from a captain's rank a flight lieutenant's rank, but he ended up with the rank of a flying officer. Never mind. Chandan Singh then started off as a fighter pilot, but there was a landing injury which forced him into becoming a transport pilot. But fate had a design and a plan for him. And this began to become evident first in the 62 operations, where he used transport aircraft to lift a lot of logistic supplies in the 62 conflict. He got a Veer Chakra there. Then in 1965, he was again used for a lot of reconnaissance and logistics missions. But I think his capping glory was in 71. First, he was moved in as a station commander of an Air Force station in the Eastern Front opposite East Pakistan. There, he was given a bunch of Bangladeshi pilots who he had to train and put them together into some kind of a little fleet. And this was a helicopter fleet that he had assembled. He was then asked to move to Agartala to meet up with the formidable General Sagat Singh. And Sagat Singh told him that I want you to go to Sylhet and they want some logistic support. So can you go there? I mean, there was never a no, as General Shami Mehta has brought out in the earlier documentary with General Sagat. With a man with that kind of a personality and with that kind of a drive, you always said yes. And Chandan Singh was a fearless man. He already had a formidable reputation. He had a Veer Chakra to his name. He had done great service in 62, 65. So he said, I'll go ahead. He went there and he came under a lot of fire from the Pakistanis. Apparently, the Pakistanis had said that they wanted to surrender there. But they come under, the helicopter pilots came under a lot of fire. So Sagat Singh got the news that Chandan Singh had decided to fight back. he eventually, all the helicopters that went there had bullet holes when they landed in their body when coming back from the operation. But that wasn't to deter Chandan Singh. Next operation, General Sagat said, I want troops heli-lifted for what became famous as the Gurkha heli-lift of 1971 in the eastern sector. Chandan Singh undertook that. And Gurkha troops were lifted. Some say the figure was 250, but my research says that in all the heli-lifts that Air Marshal Chandan Singh had carried out, later retired as an Air Marshal, he had carried out, and his team had carried out 10 sorties on 8 December. And considering the fact that 2 or 3 aircrafts were always out of commission at any time, each aircraft had carried out 12 sorties on an average, and it was a tremendous achievement. More so, Chandan Singh and his team carried out 1,200 troops and 10 tons of store-related sorties that were lifted during the Bangladesh campaign. Rightfully awarded the Mahavir Chakra, and so were many others decorated for gallantry with him. Later retired and was also given a PVSM, as you have seen against his name. But all in all, when I got to know of his story, just after that, General Air Marshal Chandan Singh had passed away. But we managed to put together interviews and information about him, and he passed away at a good age of 90 plus. But a man, truly one of the heroes of the 71 war. Next, please. Captain Mahendranath Mulla of the Indian Navy saved as many soldiers under his command, but then decided to stay on as the ship sank.
I know he won't come. Even if he could, he won't come.
Ian Cardozo, when hit by enemy fire on his leg, chose to cut off his leg.
I said, give me the kukri, I cut off my leg.
General Cardozo, sir, we are honored that you are here with us. But I must tell you a bit about Captain Mulla's story. General Cardozo's story, you might like to hear from himself. But as far as Captain Mulla went, Captain Mahendranath Mulla is probably the finest hero of the Indian Navy. Now, he was commanding a ship, INS Kukri, in the 71 war. As I said, these operations against the Navy of Pakistan had started. Pakistan had put out a submarine in the deep waters outside Mumbai, a submarine by the name of PNS Hangor, I think. And the submarine was waiting in the deep waters for the ships to come out. The ships that were there, frigates, as naval officers will educate us more, they follow a pattern to avoid submarine detection. It can be a rectangular pattern, it can be circular pattern. Some of the activity that was being taken up that time was not to the liking of Captain Mahendranath Mulla. But orders were orders, so some testing of equipment was also in SOPs and drills were being carried out. In that activity, there was another ship with him, which was doing the rounds simultaneously. PNS Hangor fired the first missile on this Indian ship, which was, I think it was INS Kirpan. And somehow there was a technical fault in the submarine's missile firing system of the Pakistanis. So it didn't kind of do the kind of engagement which Kirpan would have faced. But some quick fourrelage, as soldiers would say, led them to fire the next missile, and that hit INS Kukri. Kukri began to sink. General Cardozo, sir, has written the book. I was there, sir, for the book launch more than a decade ago at the Claridge's, The Sinking of Kukri. And you will bear me out that the officers who were there at that time have admitted that they kept shouting out to Captain Mahendranath Mulla, and the sea was on fire because of so much oil being spilt there. And in their boats with fire in the sea, can you imagine water on fire? He sets a evacuate ship. But records show that Captain Mulla refused to do that. In fact, lit a cigar and stood on his deck as the ship went down. And, pardon me? And it is the finest act of cold courage. And his view was, captain doesn't abandon ship, so he went down with the ship. But he saved as many lives as he could. He helped a lot of people evacuate. And then duty done, the last duty was to go down with the ship, went down with the ship, rightly awarded the Mahavir Chakra. Next, please.
वो ये कह के गया, ये मैं इस लड़ाई में शहीद हो गया, तुम्हें भगत सिंह की मां बना के इस दुनिया से जाऊं.
When he was up in the air, he saw these 4 sabers and he attacked one.
His net was caught between 2 bigger planes, with the one following him shooting down at him.
He was not aware that there were 2 more sabers that had accompanied the bombers.
Flying Officer Nirmaljeet Singh Sekhon had single-handedly sabotaged the attack of 6 sabers. Flying Officer Nirmaljeet Singh Sekhon, young pilot, moved to Srinagar when war was imminent. The Air Force unit which he was a part of had not had enough time to get familiarity with the terrain as they flew. And winter months, as you know, Srinagar is foggy. That area has very poor visibility. And in those circumstances, he did what he did. They were from a normal 2-minute state of alert, they were put on a 5-minute state of alert. And they used to sit in the aircrafts, freezing cold, waiting for orders to take off. He had another colleague with him, Flying Officer Ghuman. And between them, they were on the 2-man watch when Pakistani sabers came to attack Srinagar airfield. Ghuman was the first to take off. Sekhon kept waiting for orders from ATC, did not get very clear orders. So when the strafing of the runway started, I think his wisdom said that I must get going, otherwise I won't be able to take off. And he took off. Now, Ghuman went up into the clouds. That's one story. Could not connect with Sekhon because radio traffic control and radio communications were poor. So they could have on a normal day communicated through visibility, but visibility was poor also. So really they were on their own. The Pakistanis were flying with 4 Sabre jets, which any Air Force officer will tell you at that time was superior to the Nats. Whereas we had 2 Nats up against 4, but when they began to engage them, 2 more Sabres showed up. So they were basically 2 against 6. And in some confusion, Ghuman was not in the last stages of the battle that Sekhon got involved in. And it is said that Flying Officer Sekhon knocked off 6 Pakistani fighters. Apparently 1 or 2 which came as SOS to relieve them. Because some signal was picked up to say when it's 3, it's Winchester. So, which meant that they wanted more. And at that point of time, Sekhon had been engaging them, and then his aircraft was so badly hit that it fell, interestingly, at a nala in Badgam, which is where the first major battle for the defense of the valley was fought in 1947 by Major Somnath Sharma and later on by the the people of 1st Sikh under Colonel Diwan Rai, Mahavir Chakra. So Sekho was found the next day, his plane was found bullet-riddled. And by the way, those of you who are interested, that plane is still there in the museum in Palam. So you can have a look, coordinate with Air Headquarters, and they'll let you. So I've been there. I went there as part of the filming to check it out. So it's all there. All the evidence that Air Forces provided of Chandan Singh's aircrafts, Sekho's aircrafts, they're all there. So you can check it out, but truly exceptional flying skills, exceptional courage. And as his mother said that, he had said that I'll make you as proud as the mother of Bhagat Singh. And I think she had reason enough to say that. Next, please. Major Hoshiyar Singh took 42 Pakistani soldiers as POWs and killed 89 others. Second Lieutenant Arun Khetpal showed exemplary courage in the fierce tank versus tank battle.
He fired for about 5 to 6 minutes, and 8 tanks were burning in there.
He knocked out in a total of 10 Pakistani tanks. A major objective of India's forces in the 1971 was to establish a bridgehead near Jalpar village. Major Hoshiyar Singh was awarded the Paramveer Chakra. Second Lieutenant Arun Khetpal was the youngest officer to be awarded the PVC. Self-explanatory little video, but just briefly put, this battle took place around Shakargarh, the Shakargarh Bulge, which is, if you look on the map, some of you are not familiar with the geography, it's near Punjab, Jammu area. The Pakistanis were looking. One interesting thing about Pakistan is that in every war, many of their operations are a repeat of previous attempts. So you could see that they were trying to make another sort of attempt to get towards Chham and that area. And so India decided to move one corps, which was our strike corps, still is, towards Shakargarh Bulge to put or offset the Pakistani attempts to try and get into Punjab, Jammu area. And therefore the battle, which we talk about here, was basically took place under 54 Div. As far as I remember, General Vagpindo, whose famous punchline was "Bash on regardless." And there were regiments involved, both of the infantry and the armored corps. Infantry had 3rd Grenadiers and 16 Madras, and armored corps had 17 Pune Horse and 4 Hodgson's Horse. The battle took place with first the 7th Cavalry troll tanks clearing up the minefield, which was on the home side of the Basanta River obstacle. And when they cleared them up, those infantry units that were thrown across the river to go, and as some of you would know, the infantry operation, you cross an obstacle, you create a bridgehead on the other side. Then bridging systems bring the tank, and the tanks are there, and from the bridgehead area, they are launched into enemy area. So that battle to establish the bridgehead around Jalpal was a very fierce battle. And in this battle, 2 companies of 3rd Grenadiers were up front, one led by Major Hoshiyar Singh, later Paramveer Chakra, and one led by Major Sat Chima, Sena Medal, but also put up for a Paramveer Chakra, got a Sena Medal. They received fierce counterattacks by Pakistan. And Pakistan, as our veterans will tell you, is very good at counterattacks. You attack an objective, and before you can dig in and reorient and reposition your trenches to face a counterattack, the counterattack comes. That night, I believe, 6 to 8 counterattacks came. Most of them were led by the commanding officer of the Pakistani unit who died in the last counterattack, Lieutenant Colonel Muhammad Akram Raja, 35 Frontier Force. They repulsed the counterattacks. About 89 Pakistani soldiers died. Some were taken prisoners. One of the prisoners told the commanding officer of 3rd Grenadiers, Lieutenant Colonel V.P. Airy, MVC, later Lieutenant General Ved Airy, both his sons are serving generals in the Indian Army. Told him, साहब मैं तो खाली जवान हूं, मैं क्या बताऊं आपको. सीओ साहब ने अटैक लीड किया बार बार. सीओ साहब कहां हैं? आगे जाके देखा, in the front most dead body lying there was that of Colonel Akram Raja. I've seen the photograph. He's lying there holding on to his weapon. So Colonel Airy was so impressed by his gallantry that after the war, he wrote his citation. And with full military honors, he handed over his body to the Pakistanis, and the Pakistanis gave him a Hilal al-Jurat. So it's a rare example of an enemy commander writing a citation. Hoshar Singh got a Paramveer Chakra, Colonel Airy got an MVC, but in the battles that followed, there were fierce tank battles. And the famous Arun Khetrapal battle took place, where second lieutenant, that rank is not anymore in the army, Arun Khetrapal, with barely about 6 months service or so, got his PVC. The last glass of water Arun Khetrapal had was from the hands of Colonel Sat Cheema, who lives in Jalandhar, still to tell the story. And Arun Khetrapal refused to pull back. He says, sir, my CO's orders are. He says, you are completely burnt up, wounded. He said, no. In that action, Pakistani tanks had begun to come to push, again a counterattack by their tanks. But our chaps held on, and I believe Khetrapal's Charlie squadron knocked off 10 tanks. But fierce battle. General Vora was also there, and General Vora also got an MVC. CO Hodgson's Horse. I believe Major Ball also got an MVC. And the famous MVC of the minefield story of General Hanut Singh was also awarded in the 71 war in Jarpal Basantar. So these stories collectively tell us about some exceptional stories of valor and courage that only, I believe, well-trained soldiers and a professional army like the Indian Army can be proud of and can narrate. I've stuck to 40 minutes, so I'm done with it. Can I see the next slide, please? So I don't have time for question and answers, so I'll stick to my time and just briefly give you a little update about the book I have just put together. They'll show you on the slide. And then, if time permits, we can have a Q&A. I don't know where General Pannu is, or if it's a discussion waiting for Mr. Datta, then we'll do that. Would you like to ask any questions, or can? Yes, sir.
I'm very privileged to hear your presentation. 10 years back, Honorable Sheikh Hasina decided to declare Friends of Bangladesh. They would be diplomats, head of the states, and very important people. I rose in that meeting and said, can you give me a quota? He says, what job you want? I says, quota for soldiers. He says, give me the names. We have honored 36 Friends of Bangladesh. Among them, your Shamsher Singh Samra is there, and other people are there. Number 2, we have honored 1,601 Indian martyred soldiers. And among them, I would like to say a few words, if you don't mind, sir. The first major battle Indian Army fought was 28 October 1971, much before that Battle of Hilli. That was in Dhaloi. Why it happened is not an aggression. Pakistani Frontier Force Regiment, along with Razakars and militias, they are regularly shelling, and we Indians have 42 casualties. The local people petitioned the Indian government, and Sagat Singh was given the order. He marched in his second jet. The night attack was going on. It was a very difficult thing. All Panjis and Nalas and all that, he couldn't advance. His troops are falling left and right. Lieutenant Colonel S.K. Dalal, commanding officer on the wireless, were telling, "Sir, I want to withdraw, regroup and attack." And the commander said, "Attack must go on. There are casualties everywhere." Then suddenly, Y.S. Yadav, the commander, receives the bullet injury, he's evacuated. And Tom Pandey takes over. And rightly, Tom Pandey allows the regrouping. S.K. Dalal Saab is living in Gurgaon right now. I have talked to him many times. Second Jat has 36 killed. Then attack was resumed. They thought there was a company, but there are two companies, one militia company, 3 companies, 2 Razakar companies, 5 companies. Then he put in 7 Rajputana rifles. There are 7 casualties. Then he put in 14 guards. And all done, they captured Major Javed Ahmed, another one. He was seen with bullet-ridden body in the first bunker. He fought very well. So Dhaloi put a thought to General Jagjit Singh Arora, whose name none of you have mentioned today and yesterday, a great leader by his own merit, that what has to be done. That's the test battle. Next, one of the best fighters of India in 71 was Sipahi Ansu Prasad, 17 years, 6 months age. I was an observer on the left flank. I have seen him getting blown up. And we honored him as a friend of Bangladesh. His wife came to receive the honor, Chitra Devi, and asked me only one question, that he was the most handsome man he had ever seen in his life, so she married her. She was 15 years old. And I don't know how he got, I think he did hide his identity that he was married anyway. So she was asking me one question after dinner, that he was a beautiful man. When he died, did you see his body? I kept quiet. Then he says, I asked everybody, his commanding officer, his Subedar Major, his platoon Habildar, did he look so good when he died? I could not say that, Madam, I could not see any body. I saw a number of fleshes and bones all blown apart. Ansu Prasad, he saved his battalion that day in Shamshernagar airport. He alone crawled onto the bunker of the enemy, blew up the bunker, and the series of bunkers were blown up. And that's the reason 10 Mahar did succeed. The night before, the Punjab regiment failed. These are wonderful stories. And about Major Satyan Singh, I have studied a lot about history. The only comparison you can have his gallantry and his battle with Battle of Yokozuna Island, 1945, 7th of January, the Japanese Yokozuna Island. Every soldier, 25,242 soldiers died. Not one soldier surrendered. And Satyan Singh, 132 soldiers, including him, died. But look at my friends in Pakistan. The prize city of Dhaka. People say Dhaka had no troops. Believe you me, Dhaka had 25,626 troops. Not a single battle. That's what soldier is all about. Ladies and gentlemen, these stories must be told to young people. When I, in my classes, talk about Brigadier Tom Pandey, who led the battle from the front, being hit on the left-hand side by a bullet. He refused to be evacuated, still marched in. And till the end of the war, he never went to the hospital, and he got an MVC. When I talk about Major Abu Tahir of 11th Sector, I talk about him also. When I talk about Sipahi Hamidur Rahman, I talk about Ansu Prasad. Because let's think one thing. Maruf is fantastic. But if we had put in a few freedom fighters who died and consulted some of your officers, then all the spirit of 71 could be revived again. We fought together. When we talk about any operation, we always praise and talk about the gallantry of the Indian soldiers, because we fought together. We honored them every time. But over here, I'm sorry to say, you don't recognize. Your pointman is a Mukti who gets blown up first. He's your guide at night. He is with you. And he is a poor man's son, because 71 rich people's son didn't go for the war. And I'm from a very poor family also. So nothing to lose. But when you say about 71, the glamour that you show, there was no harm if 3-4 freedom fighters who fought with you, died with you in the same trench, mention their name at least. Their souls cry. They want justice. Our religious leaders tell us, when you praise a dead man, his soul comes above you in whatever religion. So all the souls are crying now that all the Indian battalions, they have praised, they haven't talked about my name. But I don't want to do that, sir. In every of my lecture, when I talk about one Paramvir Chakra, I say one Veer Shastra. One Mahavir Chakra, one Veer Shastra. This is very important. 71 was about cooperation, was not about glory, was about fighting for humanity, fighting for justice. And that is what is getting out of our history. That history says so again, that this aspect of brotherhood developed will go away if you don't honor each other. And in my country also people behave it that way, as if Indian army didn't exist. But that's anti-history. And if you are anti-history, Pontius Pilatus will again and again. Who was Pontius Pilatus? The man who crucified Jesus Christ. Being all the Jews and all the, anti-people, they are crying for and shouting and screaming for Jesus to be hanged. Pontius Pilatus was the judge. He lost his nerve. He said, try him, crucify him, kill him, cause we find no fault in him. So for no fault, don't maltreat history. It's glamorous. History is glamorous. And to each one of you, my friends and brothers, please tell the story, these stories, to your children. Let them not only be involved with their smartphones. We have a long way to go. We are living in the dangerous world today. Tomorrow, there will be requirement for these young people to come and give their blood for the country. Thank you, sir.
Well said, sir. Well said. Sorry.
Sorry, Maruf, may I?
Please, no, please, sir. Please go ahead.
Listening to Maruf and Sajjad, I just want to tell you the aftermath of the 71 war of Arun Khetarpal. I interviewed his father, and he said there is something nobody knows about, but I'll tell it to you. So I said, what is it, sir? He said that after the war, twin-track diplomacy was being used by bureaucrats and senior army retired officers to go and try and make peace between the two countries, and they invited me many times. I didn't go. But when I became 81 years old, I decided that maybe I should go and visit Sargodha, my old village. And he went, and he was met by a brigadier in Lahore, Islamabad, and they went to Sargodha. For 3 days he received VIP treatment, and he came back to Islamabad. Now, the Pakistani officers are very well off, farms, land, houses, etc. And he was staying in this brigadier's house, and the night before he left, they were talking, and that brigadier tells Arun Khetarpal's father, "Sir, I want to tell you something, but now that you've come, I'm finding it very difficult to say. So he said, what is it, son? And you'll be shocked to know what he said. He said, sir, I killed your son. Now, Arun Kettapa's father was living in this house with a man who killed his son. But he also said that, you know, I fully respect and admire Arun's parents, that is you and your wife, who brought up this boy to be such a great hero. And whereas he has been killed by me, but he himself has killed so much of us. So life and death are two sides of the same coin. We fight for our own countries, we do our best. That is the life of a soldier. And the next morning, they took a photograph with their arms around each other. And then I said, but sir, what happened when you came back? He said, my wife said, so, he addressed him by his name and said, how was the visit? He said, it was good. I said, aren't you going to tell her what happened? He said, she's an army officer's daughter, she's an army officer's wife, and an army officer's mother. She will understand.
Somehow I had an inkling that you tell this story, sir, because this was the last para in my narration, which I happily missed out, left it for you. Briefly put, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just take 2 minutes. I'll give you a little insight into a book which is might be of interest to people who are USI members. Can I have the cover, please? And this is a book I've just compiled and put together in the last 1 year, amongst other books that I've been involved with writing forward and afterwards. And also, Colonel Shivdan Singh is here, with whom I have put together a book that recently the CDS released. It's a book titled Shaurya Gatha, and it's in Hindi. It's many of the tales that you heard today, we've put together in Hindi. But this book is about Sino-Indian boundary disputes. I'll take a minute to just run it past you as to what the book looks at. It is not about just the 62 war. It is not about the current border tensions right now, but it starts from well before 1900, and then the young husband expeditions, then the Shimla meeting and the Shimla Treaty, or the Shimla various summit meetings that took place between 1913, 1914, leading to two central issues that became, can I see the map please? Leading to two central issues that became the point of contention between India and China. One is the LAC and one is the McMahon line. Now the LAC came into being much later, but the Shimla meeting that had been called by the then Viceroy and was really run through by the British Foreign Secretary in India, Henry McMahon, who had already demarcated the Durand line, which divides Pakistan and Afghanistan today. So he was a kind of line expert, borderline expert. And the meetings really were coming to an end without an agreement. The British wanted to define the outer limits of China, and in the bargain, they wanted a boundary line here, as well as they wanted a boundary line between Tibet and China. And therefore, the efforts in the Shimla meeting led to the McMahon line. Chinese have from time to time indicated their willingness to accept it, but various statements by political leaders, Pandit Nehru being in the forefront of that, about Indian territory not being negotiable, has led to several rounds of tension and a fierce conflict. Interestingly, what my book brings out, that there were less troops involved in the 62 war, the so-called war. I call it a conflict because Air Force was not used, other forces were not used. It was just 2 divisions or less than, actually 2 division minus. And it is, the force levels were less than what we had in the Kargil conflict. But we continue to live with the baggage that it was a defeat, national humiliation, what have you. It was a defeat of Nehru's foreign policy. It was a humiliation for the country because Nehru and his ilk decided that they had gone wrong and therefore they felt humiliated, and as they said, Nehru never recovered from it. The other thing that the book brings out is the fact that we chose not to use the Air Force. I made a mention of that in the Tales of Valor, just like we chose not to use the Navy in '65 because we didn't want the conflict to escalate. We could have used to our advantage, things would have worked out differently. Why did China choose to attack us during that 1 month period when the Cuban Missile Crisis took place? There are reasons there. The reason that China also chose to clip Pandit Nehru's wings because he was becoming a larger-than-life personality, or to stall India's efforts to probe into Chinese nuclear plants that were taking shape there and China's nuclear ambition to become a nuclear power. If India had exposed that, America would have put the screws on China. Finally, after that, the Nathula incident, a book is here outside on that. My book deals with that. But between 62 and Nathula, it has a chapter on what really came out of the Henderson-Brooks study, or Brooks-Bhagat study. I talk about that. I don't have access to the Henderson-Brooks report, but there's enough material in the public domain to compile something about what the Henderson-Brooks report was trying to say. And finally, post-67, how China went into 20 years of slumber in a way against us on the border because of the hammering General Sagat and his men brought to bear on China and Nathula and Chola. And then the Sumdrongchu incident, what messaging it sent out to the Chinese in 86, 87, the fact that India was willing now and not willing now to hit back, I mean, if the Chinese crossed the line. And in all this, two things emerge, that our political leadership seems to be pretty clueless about the problem. And the second thing that emerges is that those who take decisions on China haven't read a book on China. So my suggestion is that if China is a subject you have to deal with, I might humbly recommend that you might consider picking up a copy of my book, which will be out this month in the market. It's being published by Westland, hardcover, 200 odd pages, footnoted, no assumptions made, without references, and references that are in the public domain. So I'm not saying at any stage a source told me that this was what was being discussed. These sources I don't go by. I say something, you join the dots. All I've done for you is join the dots and come to assumptions. So that's all. I'm not going to do more self-trumpeting, but I thought I'll use this opportunity to announce that a book on China as part of the Value of Words initiative is also out, but it takes time. I was down with COVID and various other things, so it took me longer than given to be able to edit the book, and therefore a bit delayed. Otherwise, it would have been out next week. Last month, sorry, but it will be out now next week. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful for your time, and I hand it back to the MC for the next round of activity.